Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the account settings. Again, to get to the account settings, the easiest way for me is to just double click on the table over here. It opens it up right away. Other option is go up here to the gear icon. Select the gear icon and get right here also. So we're going to be focused on this section up here to start. Pretty much most of this is self-explanatory. I do want to point out something though. The only settings that you want to actually focus on are the settings under the Inputs tab. Properties, any of the stuff in here for properties, this initial capital, anything that's in here is irrelevant. It's not going to affect the strategy whatsoever in this case, in Simple Strat case. So just focus on the input section. Again, we'll focus on this stuff up here. Self-explanatory. Broker, you're going to want to select, obviously, if you're doing the auto trade feature, you need to select the broker that you're going to be using for auto trade. There is Tradier paper account, TD Ameritrade. Again, you have to be an existing API user of Ameritrade's API. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for the Schwab, the migration over to Schwab. They're not accepting any new requests to access the API. So if you're an existing user, that's great. You can use it. If you're not, then you have to hold off. E-Trade's a work in progress. Their API is just to actually get the API authenticated is a bit of a pain in the butt. So I'm trying to work through a simpler process for you guys so that you can easily get the API key. Oanda paper. If you're doing anything related to Forex. And then one thing that's not on here is interactive brokers. Interactive brokers is also supported. That's a bit of a complex process to get set up as well. And, I can go through that on a one-off basis if you're going to be using interactive brokers. I'll send you a document to set it up. Outside of that, the email that you use to subscribe to the Simple Strat service, the one that you had put in your portal, is the email address that you have to put in here. So for me, my test account says timothy.f.greco@gmail.com. So this is the key indicator. This is what it looks for to reference the records that are housed on the back end to match up this trade signal with your brokerage details. Account currency, if you're in the US, your basic currency is probably US dollar. If you're in the UK, you're probably British pounds. Wherever you are, this is helpful, especially when you're doing Forex. This is actually going to, I wrote code that will convert if you're trading currency pairs that are not part of your base currency. So if let's say I'm in the US and I'm trading the euro to Great Britain pound, but I'm using US dollars. I need to make sure that my US dollars, that I'm properly converting the currency, in this case the euro, into US dollars, just for the pure calculation of what the proper the risk amount that I'm willing to risk on the trade. I want to make sure that that's based in US dollars and then convert it right back into the local currency, the currency pair. That's a long way of saying it just makes sure that we're converting and using the correct 1% of $10,000 and not 1% of 10,000 euro, which would end up being more than 10,000 US dollars. So hopefully that makes sense. Risk of account value, again, this is directly related to the amount of initial capital. The amount of initial capital is exactly what it sounds like, the amount that we're putting in our account, or at least the study or the strategy. That's how much we're telling Simple Strat, how much we're going to use to calculate our trades if you're trading shares. So I have in here $10,000. I'm willing to risk 1% of $10,000 or $100 on any given trade. And this section over here this is more so for, I put this in here for margin accounts. I use a margin account, and what Simple Strat does is it looks at, when it calculates the number of shares, it automatically calculates the number of shares. You'll see over here, back here, this calculated 231 shares for this transaction. This calculated 164 for the same ticker, 182. So it differs because of the size of the stop. And so when Simple Strat looks for what the price level is for your entry, if it triggers, and then it looks at what your initial stop would be, it decides, Simple Strat decides with your, with your configuration, obviously, but it decides where it's going to put your initial stop. And so it calculates the balance or the difference between your trigger and your initial stop, figures out how many shares you can afford to buy based off of a 1% risk or whatever percent you put in there. And so it maximizes the number of shares. Well, in the case where we've got, a very small trigger to stop for the original calculation, and we have a very small dollar amount, it's going to maximize the number of shares you can buy. I want to make sure that I can limit how much capital it's able to use on a single trade. So in this example, it's just an example, I'm telling it, okay, so $10,000 is my account value, use 1% risk of that $10,000, but I have a margin account, and in that margin account, don't use more than $40,000 in one particular trade. Again, it's just made up numbers at this point, but this is just a way to cap the amount that it will allow in a single trade. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to go through some of the rest of this stuff in the next video, so stay tuned. Thank you.